Welcome to Season 6 of the Interwoven podcast. This season, we are diving into conversations on intimacy and sexual health and are thrilled to share support with Kind Body Milwaukee. Dr. Ellen Hayes and her dedicated team are on a mission to transform fertility and family-building care, making it more accessible, intuitive, and empowering for all. Remember to subscribe wherever you listen and access our free guides and weekly newsletter at interwoven.com. That is interwovxn.com. Let's get started. We're going to go from this conversation into the preview for the season, but also our relationship stuff. And like, this is just what we do before we even record. I'm sorry. Okay, you were saying that
Okay, so I'll start back a little bit. So I went this weekend. My mom got me for my birthday a salt spa 45-minute session. And at first, I was not super excited about it. I'd done it once before. And for some reason, must have not been in a good headspace with it. And so I went, and it was actually amazing. I think that it was sort of exactly what I needed when things are really busy and crazy. And I feel like there's a lot on my plate. Like sitting still isn't always my MO, but it probably was just what I needed. Yeah, so I felt like I was on the beach and it was warm in there. And so I just closed my eyes and I rested. And then I did some brain dumping, like ideal life. Like, what does my ideal life look like? Because sometimes I think it can be hard to have clarity on what you want and what you're working towards when you're sort of in it. So that was a really lovely surprise and a great way to start out the weekend.
I'm super curious about the salt dealie. I haven't done that yet.
It's supposed to be really good for allergies and asthma and all sorts of different things. It's literally like a room with salt pumped into it.
When you said warm, beachy experience, I exhaled.
Yeah.
I did a deep breath. And
yeah.
then I exhaled. So season 6, here we are. And
that's funny. I was about to say season 5, but we are on season 6. Yes, we are moving.
So we chose to go back to the theme format, and we chose intimacy, which it's a theme that has come up in our conversations a lot. It's something that has come up with our conversations with our clients and the type of work we do with our friends. It's such a broad category. There's so much that comes underneath intimacy. And so why did you feel like this should be a focus for us?
Yeah, I think you're right. It came up a lot in our conversations. And one of the things even that we've talked about is our relationship, the two of us forming this partnership, and how that is in and of itself a process of learning about another person and kind of entering into a relationship in a different way than maybe you're used to, and how that maybe requires you to be more vulnerable or to open up to another human about some of your inner workings. I think the other piece that we've talked about a lot is in creating our woven wellness guides and looking at some of the potential for future guides or areas where we feel like we haven't covered when looking at sort of the spectrum of women's health. Definitely sexual health is something that has come up as a potential area of focus for future conversation because it is so important in so many regards, right? From just sort of knowing what is normal with your own body to relationships to pleasure as we age. We were excited that the umbrella of intimacy really allowed us to talk about a number of these things with the upcoming season.
And the role of intimacy matters to us in so many ways. It's the intimacy in our friendships and our partnerships. It's, like you said, it's knowledge about our bodies and knowing what our health is telling us. It's, if we have children, it's helping them navigate friendships and learning about their bodies. So witnessing these conversations with our guests this season, we listened to how they shared everything from how they define intimacy, from vulnerability in our friendships and our relationships, their relationships with their bodies and their sexual health, which encompass topics like the health of reproductive systems and our fluctuating libido in middle life. And like you said, our relationship with pleasure and knowing that there are safe spaces to have these conversations and educate ourselves and learn more so that we can have whole, healthy lives. I chatted with Jessica Spears. She has guidance for parents with children who are navigating the years leading up to middle school and those also who are in those tween years. And that's where I am, apparently. My daughter, who is 9.5, is apparently technically a tween. So that was eye-opening. And I really enjoyed that conversation. I feel like I walked away with some important information on how to think about parenting my kiddo. This was fun. We got to feature 2 of our board members, Ginny Edwards and Emily Lombard, as they led some important conversations.
Our board member, Emily Lombard, OBGYN, spoke with Lauren from Pelvic Health and Wellness about pelvic floor health and how doctors and PTs kind of best work together to serve women and support their pelvic health as they age and through the various sort of stages of whether that be pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause. And so that was really a great conversation and one I think really all women should listen to because in other countries, pelvic floor care is really part of regular women well care. And we don't always see that a lot here. And so kind of learning when certain things might be caused by a weakness or tightness in the pelvic floor can be really important.
And then we had board member Ginny Edwards, who talked with her friend, Dr. Mia Cowan, who was the founder and director of the Mibella Wellness Center. They talked about hormones. They talked about, a variety of intimacy solutions. They talked about the importance of wellness and Dr. Mia loves to say that she likes to help her patients achieve everlasting intimacy. She guides them in different ways to live well and age well. They talk about everything from uterine fibroids and fertility, perimenopause, and knowing your family history and all that good stuff. We also talked to a sex therapist. We got to have some open, honest conversations about that where we got to ask questions.
What I loved about those conversations, so we spoke to both a sex therapist and a sexual health educator. And I think the thing that I walked away with is the importance of communication and how communication really allows you to be more present with your partner or with yourself and really expressing your needs and what feels good for your partner.
Which also translates into vulnerability. So like those 2 pieces, Rebecca, came up in pretty much every episode, which was really interesting. That communication was so important and what people really valued in their relationships, which translated into that vulnerability, all connecting to intimacy for them.
Absolutely. I think that, we talked about in one of the episodes how we have this idea that like talking about it isn't sexy, but in reality, we are all ever evolving people, right? Our needs, our desires, our wants, all of those things can shift as we shift. And so even when you're with someone, and maybe in particular, especially when you're with someone for a long period of time, assuming that everyone just wants what they have wanted or that they are who they were and none of that changes isn't realistic.
I totally agree. I am not the same person that I was when my husband and I were first dating or even like through the first half of our relationship. I think our 40s are such an interesting time for that because there is so much that is changing and evolving that we're trying to keep up with ourselves while we're also engaged with the people around us and supporting the people around us, that we have to develop the language for what our needs are, what interests us, how we're changing, what that means to us. And being able to have the conversation about relearning how to feel sexy in our skin at this time, how to feel sexy in our bodies at this time.
Absolutely. And it's not just, of course, all about sex, right? Like we talk about that, I think, in a lot of the different conversations, whether that's, the conversation that you had regarding post-baby and parenting and all of those things, right? It's communicating your needs and your desires, whether that is from your partner in a variety of different ways, right? And how kind of being vulnerable can lead to greater intimacy.
Well, I talked with Coral and Erica about how partners can maintain their connection or reestablish their connection post-baby. There's work that can be done in the lead up to and the expectation of having your family expanding. And there's also work that can be done after baby arrives to keep that relationship strong, because often it gets put on the back burner. And I know that because I experienced that when I brought my daughter home and I went through my postpartum time, which was very challenging, I retreated and I focused on her. And my husband and I had some rebuilding that we had to do. It takes work and dedication and exploring new territory together, finding that new language, and again, being vulnerable, being okay with being vulnerable, and being okay with not being okay around each other at times. There were a lot of lessons for us in that. So it was really comforting and reassuring to talk with Coral and Erica and explore that.
I think this last year, as we have been exploring our own relationship, it has been so interesting because I feel like I've learned so much more about you in the last year or two. And we've known each other for, what is it? We've always said, is it 10 years, 15 years, something like that, a really long time. And it's interesting to be in a different space with someone or a different, and so things like that I had no idea. I'm like, how is it that never came up before? And so that has been really fun, is getting to know someone that you thought you knew really well and realizing that there's so much more to them that you didn't know or didn't think to ask. And then, of course, the vulnerability piece, right? When you are working closely with someone and you are trying to build something together, whether that's a family or a business, that there are going to be moments where you're not at your best, or there's going to be vulnerabilities or insecurities that come up that you realize potentially impact your ability to show up that day. And again, sort of allowing that vulnerability and having trust that the person that you've stepped into this relationship with is there to kind of hold that space and allow you to be yourself and work through those has been a really, really wonderful gift and process for me, because having sort of worked by myself for most of my career, it's a new muscle that I'm learning to work. And I'm used to sort of just getting shit done and not really having accountability, but this is sort of in a different way.
For me, I was usually working with small teams of people. So there were a lot of egos, and it affected communication, and people were hesitant to put themselves out there because there was a lack of trust. And I had to leave that because it was not sustainable and it was unhealthy, and it just didn't resonate with me with how I wanted to live my life. And so I did start to work by myself, but I found you and I worked alongside you until we started doing Interwovxn and created this partnership where we realized really quickly that there was no place for egos, that trust was of utmost importance, that we needed to be able to go to each other and say, I need to take a moment to say something, or I'm feeling a certain way, and the other person opens that space and holds it. And I feel like we've done really well with that. I feel safe. I feel able to come to you when I'm struggling, and that means a lot.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I think it really, I think through all the conversations this season, you realized how much trust and communication sort of play a role in intimacy, right? In our ability to be intimate. And also, I will say for me, intimacy and communication are also about having hard conversations. And while I may be used to doing that in my marriage, I don't like conflict. And I have a history potentially of dynamics work-wise, let's say collaborations or things like that, where things didn't play out the way that I had thought. And so that trust piece has been an interesting one to kind of sit with. And knowing that I feel safe and good moving through and into this partnership and this dynamic, it also is working a muscle for me about having hard conversations. It's like I don't want to ruffle feathers. I don't want to hurt someone's feelings. And I know we've had a lot of discussions about that the last 2 years of like, you know what, it's okay. If we're going to move forward and grow from this, we have to be able to have hard conversations. And you're not always going to love everything I do, and I'm not always going to love everything you do. But that's part of what being in any type of partnership is.
And I still want to know what you're thinking and what you're feeling. I think for us to be productive together, we have to be on the same page.
Yes. I think, yeah. And I think that it's hard sometimes because because we have so many other balls in the air that, we've even talked about, we're trying to like do like a monthly dinner together. And honestly, we haven't been that great about that, right? And
No.
because we're juggling kind of the ball with our families and with our other work and with Interwoven and trying to kind of get everything checked off the list. And so I know it's something that is still a work in progress for us, but it is making time for our relationship too, right? Just like I'm trying to be better this summer. My goal is to try and schedule a weekly date night, which I've heard people say that on other podcasts or other things. And that always seemed like, I don't know how that's possible, but I feel like we sort of need to commit some of that time. We need that space to like talk and to have fun together. And as much as I feel like while I'm doing that with my husband, that also we benefit from having fun time together. So I know that that's one of our goals for the year, right? Because it's hard to try and have a well-rounded connection when everything is all business all the time. Right. Even at home, I would say my husband would agree. Like sometimes it feels like we're literally just like on the hamster wheel and moving through the week and okay, it's your turn to take her to swim. And this is, like whose turn is it to do the parenting? And, you have intentions to have like this family time and, half the time that goes a different direction than you had intended.
Yeah. It becomes operational. We're running a business and, my intentions are there to have at least like 10 minutes together at the end of the day when kiddo goes to bed, no devices, just like, hey, how was your day? Let's connect, catch up. But recently I've been like falling asleep at the same time my daughter, and I wake up and, the house is dark and I'm like, well, there we go. I'm just totally missed. Yeah, there's that. And we're catching each other in between, like driving to work, driving to our jobs, driving to our clients, I'm like, hey, Rebecca, okay, we've got 20 minutes. Let's talk while I'm driving.
Yeah. It just made me think too about back to the salt spa. Also there's the other piece of the puzzle, which is I think just like whether you want to call it intimacy with yourself or just space for yourself. You mentioned when we were talking earlier about the workshop that you and Caitlin are doing on motherhood about what was this statistic that
women typically get less than an hour to themselves each day, which really resonated with me and made my head explode a little bit because it's true for me. Absolutely. I love my work. I love what I do, but my time to myself is usually like driving my car from one place to another. And I realized at this time in my life, I need more than that. I need more than that to reboot, to get back to Theresa.
Yeah. And I think that's a big piece of the puzzle, right? Too, is like, how can you communicate your needs if you're not taking time to figure out what those needs are? And I know that that's a big thing for me going back to the salt spa. Like I felt really great after I did kind of a brain dump of what, like, what do I want? What does that look like? Because I think again, we're on the hamster wheel all the time and it can be easy to kind of not connect with ourselves. I know, as I said, when I was talking about the salt spa, that it is not easy when I'm busy and stressed. Like it feels better for me to just keep moving versus like sitting still. And sitting still is likely exactly what I need.
And we'll be right back. Are you looking to build your family, or would you like to better understand your fertility potential for when you are? From fertility assessments to cutting-edge treatments, Kind Body Milwaukee offers personalized and compassionate care to support your reproductive needs. With over 15 years of experience and countless success stories, Dr. Ellen Hayes believes in providing honest and accurate information, incorporating healthy lifestyle recommendations, and taking a collaborative approach to care with each patient. She and the Kind Body Milwaukee team are dedicated to assisting patients facing fertility challenges and are thrilled to offer the latest technology and techniques within their new state-of-the-art IVF lab in the heart of downtown Milwaukee. To learn more or to schedule a consultation, call 262-518-7448 or visit kindbody.com.
Yeah, we're all still learning. It's a constant learning process. And thank goodness we have experts out there, these women who have dedicated themselves to learning and sharing so that we can be our best selves, our whole healthy selves, and pass that along to our kids while doing all the things.
and enjoying our 40s and 50s and 60s. And, sort of this idea that women become invisible and that things go downhill from here. Like, that doesn't have to be the case. And in fact, after talking to a lot of our guests, like, I'm excited for what's to come. And I'm excited to figure out what it is that I want going forward and what feels good to my body.
Because it's definitely changed. And I know that, and you can probably speak to this better than I can, but we move through our 40s and 50s with the estrogen lowering, that's like our service hormone. That's the being of service and the nurturing and all of that. And so as that starts to drop, we start to give less fucks about stuff. I'm starting to feel that. I mean, I love being of service. I will always love that. I'm definitely a nurturer by nature, but I'm really enjoying caring a little less about stuff that I used to and making room for other things that matter.
Yes, I think that's so interesting because on my radar this week, I feel like all this stuff has been popping up about eldest daughter syndrome. So I went down this rabbit hole of eldest daughter syndrome, and I am the oldest, and I only have one sibling, and he's only 1 year younger than me. So I'm not that much eldest. But anyway, a lot of the pieces of sort of what the kind of potential signs that one might experience, I realized like, wow, I have spent a good chunk of my life sort of kind of being in this role of very reliable. I get things done. I don't want to disappoint other people. Historically, 100% a people pleaser. I want to help people. I want to fix things. I mean, I became an acupuncturist, right? And I always say, like, having been in this field for almost 20 years, it's such an interesting space to be in to try and offer support and guidance for others and realizing sort of your own role in that. And so the whole like giving less fucks thing is super interesting because I feel myself coming into this new space where I know I'm always going to give a fuck because that's just who I am, but not at the expense of myself anymore. And I think that started probably even more after having Everly. Like, definitely, I saw some shifts happening there where I didn't have the ability to give as much as I had given before, but it also wasn't a bad thing. And so I love, from a Chinese medicine perspective, menopause is also called sort of the second spring. And it's sort of this opportunity to rediscover who you are and what you want. And so I think the conversations of this season of intimacy, of sexual health are really exciting and important because it's all a piece of the puzzle of what brings us joy and how it is that we want to live this next chapter. And I'm really excited about that.
That's awesome. I love it. I love being a part of it.
Yes. And I love being on the journey together. And that we get to talk about all of this with one another and with all of the amazing women that we have been able to connect with since starting this. All right, should we jump to our thread questions?
Let's do it. Yes. So, hey, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Can you describe a time you felt totally alive?
I have been trying to think about if there was sort of one time. And recently I posted on Instagram about how it was identified when I did my human design assessment that my like favorite place or my sort of happy place is markets. And in sitting with that, what I've realized is the times that I feel like I have felt most alive, it's not necessarily one distinct, but it is really being somewhere new. So traveling for me, especially if there is good food, like happening into a restaurant that wasn't really on your radar and the food is amazing and the visuals are different or exciting, and being with, whether that's with Mark or with a good friend or my family, and just sort of like being present in that spot with a good meal and kind of taking in all of the sensory experiences of that space. For me, those are like the times where I feel like totally in my bliss.
So funny because that was my answer too.
What?
Yeah. I find that when I feel the most like in my skin is when I am out of my element. So, and that's usually like when I travel, when I go to new places, it's the sights, the smells, the sounds. I think about when I was 22 and it was the first time that I left, I was far away from my parents, and I went to Europe to visit family that lives in Italy, and I ended up traveling around for a little bit. But I was totally on my own in foreign countries where I didn't speak the language, and I was a blank slate. I didn't carry my identity from home, and I had to figure out how to take the railway system and public transportation and grocery shop and all of that stuff. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. I would also throw in when I was a birth doula, and I would get those phone calls at 1 a.m. to jump in the car and go be with a woman who was going through this experience and stand in that with her and stand next to her. Hospitals are also not my element. So, and that's like, you just feel the energy of that place, but to just step in and stand next to a woman as she moves through this incredible life passage. Yeah, I was like electric in my skin.
Yeah, I will definitely agree with you there. The births that I have been at, there is, something definitely magical about being witness to birthing a human being, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think that is really magical.
Oh, funny. So we overlap on our aliveness.
And going back to the darn salt spa again, I would say that also the ocean and being something about salt water for me is also my happy place. I've been known, one time we went to Florida when Mark's dad was ill, and it was a short trip. We made it to the ocean like right before we were going to get on the airplane. And I like went in the ocean like fully dressed because I was like, I literally don't, like, I cannot go back to Wisconsin and not go in the ocean. And so there is something about sort of salt water. Makes me quite alive.
Yeah.
Okay,
Rebecca. Thanks. I'm super excited to see where this season goes and beyond. I'll talk to you probably later today.
Yeah, sounds good. Can't wait.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today in the Interwoven space. We invite you to give us a star review and to hit subscribe for a new empowering conversation each week. Visit our website for more of our resources, health guides, podcast episodes, and more at www.interwoven.com. That's interwovxn.com. With this project, we are creating space for women to share their stories. It is not meant to diagnose or treat a medical condition. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare providers with any questions you may have regarding your health and well-being. Special thanks to Gina Barrington for providing the interwoven music. Until next time.